Hey, is anyone here going to talk about the fact that we could be in war with Iran in a few days? Or do we need to focus on the S&P 500? Is that what actually matters? Huh? The S&P 500? When most people may not even be alive here in a few days just because we're on the verge of nuclear war? Hey, listen to me, Mr. Krugman. Your degree is worthless. You might as well use it as paperweight because it means nothing. I hope you enjoy the dead children that the economy is powering. Our economy is definitely very powerful right now. All that stock market money goes to the military complex so that more innocent women and children are dead. And fuck off with the New York Times, the liberal apologists for war and genocide. You all fucking suck. People need to wake up right now, and we need to have peace. We can work with China. We can work with Russia. We don't need to start war with Iran. All right, I'm good. We're good.
World War III updates. Israel bombs Iran. Israel launches 200 aircraft and bombs Iranian nuclear site. Western powers have threatened the Iranian uranium refinement program for a long time. So now it just happened. Israel launched a massive airstrike. Iran retaliated, striking Israel with more than 100 drones. This means war between Israel and Iran, as far as my analysis is concerned. What are my thoughts? Netanyahu is dangerous and he needs to be stopped. Netanyahu's regime is arrogant and overconfident. Attacking Iran is a mistake. They are surrounded by enemies. It will ultimately be his doom.
ساعت الان 3:37 ورودی فرحزاده پایین
بالش کاملا تخریب شده و سوخته، پایینش سالمه.
17 Israelis so far have received treatment from injuries by shrapnel from those incoming Iranian missiles. And the Israeli Prime Minister, as we speak now, is meeting with his security cabinet to assess the situation. His defense minister, Israel Katz, said before the meeting that Iran had crossed a red line, that it was targeting civilian areas. An ironic statement, of course, coming from a minister commandeering a relentless assault on civilian areas in Gaza and also in Iran, as we saw and reported earlier today.
مسلم نیروی مسلح جمهوری اسلامی ضربه‌های سنگینی بر این دشمن خبیث وارد خواهد آورد و جمهوری اسلامی به اذن الهی بر رژیم صهیونیستی فائق خواهد شد. ملت عزیز این رو بدونن و مطمئن باشن و خاطر جمع باشن که در این زمینه هیچ کوتاهی صورت نخواهد گرفت.
Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons.
He's given an interview to a news channel here in the United States in the last hour. He says he was aware of the attack beforehand, but they were not involved militarily. He did speak to one of his Middle East allies. He did not say which one, to inform them that the attack was about to start, but he wanted to reassure them that the US was not involved. That is a message that we've heard several times from several US officials, including Marco Rubio, who of course is the Secretary of State and the acting National Security Advisor, as well as a number of unnamed officials who said that there was no involvement of US forces in this operation. Donald Trump says he hopes that Iran will still come back to the negotiating table, and we're told that Steve Witkoff, his main negotiator with Iran, is still heading to Oman. He still believes that the 6th round of talks will go ahead this weekend. He said that over the last few days he'd spoken to Benjamin Netanyahu, that they had replenished the Iron Dome missile system for Israel, and he warned Iran that not only would the US respond if they were attacked, they would respond if Israel was attacked as well. So continuing to insist that he was not surprised by this attack, even though he himself had said that he thought it was likely but not imminent. That was just several hours ago. And he'd also sent out on his social media platform that he wanted negotiations to continue and was directing his government to try and come up with a solution to Iran's nuclear negotiations, and believing that he could convince them that they should not pursue having a bomb.
There is a lot of anger and fear in Iran. I've spoken to many people who were woken up by the sound of explosions in the Iranian capital, Tehran. They're still reeling from what is actually transpiring. People are still in shock that Israel has carried out a number of attacks across the country, but of course the biggest ones being in the capital, Tehran, in densely populated civilian areas. A number of neighborhoods in North Tehran and east and western part of the capital came under attack by Israel. What they said, they were targeting military commanders, whereas the civilian population is caught in the middle. People in Iran haven't seen this kind of attacks since the Iran-Iraq War, which ended in 1988. So there's still a lot of fear that this is going to continue in the days ahead and that the worst is yet to come.
اینجا رو زدن، اینجا رو هم زدن، این لویزان هم زدن، پشتم زدن. چپ بیاد اینجا رو میزنن، رامز چپ بیاد اینجا رو میزنن.
متاسفانه اکثر مصدومین ما یا خانم یا کودکان در حال استراحت در شب بودن و خیلی هاشون اصلا از نظر روحی روانی حالت شوک زده داشتن، چون در خواب بودن و هیچ کدوم نظامی ما توشون ندیدیم. همه یا خانواده بودن.
موشک همین الان اسرائیل حمله کرد، میرسن زنده موشک زدن.
به نظر من باید به عنوان یه ایرانی پاسخ دهنوشکن بدم، پاسخ متقابل بدم. ما چقدر دیگه جونمون بلرزه؟
باید ما هم یه کاری بکنیم، حداقل اینا وای نیستن تا او حمله کنه. باید اما اینا دیشب میزدن داغونش میکردن به هم. نباید شد بیای جلو این حرومزاده که ای تو زن بچه مجد اسیر بشیم مثل قزه.
یعنی دارن به ما زور میگن، اصلا قابل قبول نیست.
خود اسرائیل داره تا آخرین نفساشو داره جونشو میکنه که بخواد به یه جایی برسه، اما بازم نمیرسه.
ساعت الان 3:37 ورودی
و منتظر بودیم تا خطایی از اسرائیل دست بزند تا بتوانیم به جهانیان قدرت ایران را نشان دهیم.
انتظار ما این هست که انتقام خون این شهیدان ما و دانشمندان مظلومی که در این حملات امروز هم شهید شدن گرفته بشه.
مرگ بر اسرائیل!
Watch this. These are illegal Israeli settlers that have fled like cowards. They fled Israel and they went back home to their ancestral homeland in Europe. And they were met with protesters saying free Palestine. And look at their vile behavior. It just shows you this is Israeli culture. This is Zionist culture. These people have no respect for the countries that they're visiting or the countries where they claim to be their own. Because they pillage and they rape and they burn crops and they steal things and they're allergic to the environment. Oh, they're so vile.
لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
تلاش روزنامه‌نگاران تحقیقی تا حدی نتیجه داد و معلوم شد علاوه بر امور بیش از 90
حاليا حد الحرم ما بعرف وين بالضبط بس حد الحرم دغري.
Nothing official yet. They haven't turned on the microphones, and sometimes you can pick something up in the side conversations. But
مر علينا دول
ومن الليل
וואو ببته کو
יואו, הלך הבניין. יואו, יואו.
In the middle of Tel Aviv, what you're looking at here is the crater from one of the Iranian ballistic missiles that hit last night, and this is the blast damage.
نزل نزل على الجسر
كان غزة بس بده يطرح عليه.
اللهم زيدهم وبارك يا رب. ايوه ايوه
هيها
هذه الاشياء اللي بتفتح النفس.
هيها بدنا كمان بكفوش هدول يا عمي. كان غزة بزغر بس بده مش يطلع عليه غلابة.
اي والله شيء بيفرح يا زلمه. ايوه
الرد الايراني بلش. جاهزين؟ تعالوا معي.
الاخوان خير شنو تقعد شتوني الخميس لسه شو مكانه طمنوا فيكم كنتات مش خايف تنسيطر صعب لك حساب تقعد شت عينك ديال خوف وقعد عالساكت يرحم
You need to share this video with anyone and everyone that will watch it, because an Israeli professor at Ben Gurion University analyzed Israeli military data and posted a report to the Harvard Dataverse indicating that Israel has killed over 377,000 Palestinians since October 2023. Israel's so confident with their data that they estimate the number of Palestinians in the 3 camps that they've pushed them down to. Because you can see, everything has been decimated around them. And you want to know what else? These black lines surrounding these camps are newly paved military roads. These red numbers are supposed aid distribution sites. These colored circles surrounding them are different buffer zones, and they are literally no-go zones for Palestinians. This concentration camp up here has no aid accessibility unless you cross over the Netzarim corridor, which is a literal death trap. So they have an entrance pen, which is fenced maze, and it has barbed wire at the top. This yellow line here are sand hills, which funnel them into this corridor that is also a death trap. So once they get through the maze of fencing, there are guard posts at every corner, military roads within that, sand barriers, and then aid distribution. So once they go through the maze to get into this area, they get shot at. And then getting out is another maze, which is another opportunity to shoot and kill them. In these concentration camps, there's one bathroom, and they've pushed Palestinian tents as close together as possible, and there's sewage running around, and bugs are rapidly transmitting disease. At least 1 in 5 Palestinians is facing famine. And right now, there is a heat wave. So Palestinians are having to open their tent doors up to cool off. And now they have to worry about scorpions and snakes getting into those said tents. This is insanely awful, and you need to share it with as many people as possible.
A Harvard-linked study by an Israeli professor finds that Israel disappeared nearly 400,000 Palestinians in Gaza, with half of them being children. The report was written by Israeli professor Yaakov Garb, who used data-driven analysis as well as spatial mapping to show how the Israeli army's siege of Gaza as well as the IDF's indiscriminate attacks on the civilian population of Gaza led to a significant drop in Gaza's population. The roughly 400,000 Palestinians that have been disappeared by Israel's genocide are approximately 17% of the entirety of Gaza's population. The Israeli professor also go on to say that the official death toll of 61,000 is also woefully underreported and underestimated, as the victims who remain trapped underneath the rubble, many of whom of course by now have lost their lives, are not accounted for in that 61,000 number. The Israeli professor also called out the US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and how they are now routinely shooting at starving Palestinians who are going there to get food but only get bullets.
Israeli soldiers have been speaking to local media about the killings at the food sites. The Haaretz newspaper says soldiers were ordered to deliberately shoot Palestinians near aid centres despite them not posing a danger to anyone. We're going to go now to Hamda Salut in Jordan's capital, Amman. She's there because the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting inside Israel, as well as the occupied West Bank. Hamda, this is a remarkable admission. What more was revealed in these reports?
A shocking admission in the Israeli newspaper Haaretz that interviewed a lot of different soldiers and commanders talking about how they were given orders to shoot and kill Palestinians who were seeking aid in order to disperse the crowds. Now, for nearly a month since this all began on May 27th, the Israeli military and the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation have either denied or downplayed the fact that there are Palestinians getting killed while they are seeking aid. People in Gaza have said that these distribution centers have now become a trap for Palestinians. And several different AIDS groups have said that the Palestinians are left with no choice to either starve to death or die seeking the very little food that is offered within the distribution centers from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which from the beginning was this sort of shadowy group, incredibly controversial, still unclear who exactly is backing it, who exactly gave it this initial funding. The Israelis denied it, the Americans denied it, but many are pointing the finger at the Israelis for wanting to control all of the humanitarian distributions in order to get more access militarily inside of Gaza. But what this report is saying is that the 549 Palestinians who've been killed in the last month seeking aid were killed by Israeli soldiers who were given orders to do so.
Of course, people cannot leave Gaza. Are they able to leave Israel?
No, they're not. Actually, the Israeli government, other than airports being closed, the Israeli government issued a specific instruction today saying that assuming Israeli airlines or other airlines were going to return Israelis stranded abroad in a week or so, or try and return them, they were forbidden from carrying Israelis outside the country. So Israelis can't leave Israel. I think they can leave by sea, but the competition for places on yachts and other boats has now driven the prices to exorbitant heights.
The US just fired a Pentagon official because he refused to die for Israel. Pentagon official Colonel Nathan McCormick was removed from his position as the Levant and Egypt branch chief at the Joint Chiefs of Staff for posts that he made calling Israel a death cult. He also went on to refer to Netanyahu and his ilk as, quote, Judeo-supremacist cronies, and then goes on to ask whether the United States is acting as Israel's proxy. And he's sounding the alarm because he knows war against Iran would not only be catastrophic for US soldiers, but it'll be the greatest challenge the US military has faced since World War II. I mean, just look at how Iran responded after threats made by Donald Trump to not only evacuate Tehran, but Donald Trump also threatened to assassinate their supreme leader unless they stop attacking Israel, to which Iran responded by sending yet another missile barrage at Israel that hit key military spots all over Israel and also destroyed Mossad's iconic Unit 8200 base. And while all of this was happening, US intelligence also reported, according to New York Times, that Iran had pointed some of their newer generation missiles directly at US bases in the Middle East.
Know where this is? This is in the middle of Tel Aviv. These are Iron Dome launchers in the middle of Tel Aviv, surrounded by residential apartment buildings. Also, the Israeli military's HQ is in the middle of Tel Aviv, surrounded by residential apartment buildings. Tell me again, how many times over the past 20 months have we heard that Hamas is using residential areas as military bases, right? Hospitals, schools, all of that. How they're embedding themselves within the civilian population, using them as human shields. How many times have we heard that? They have been using that shit as an excuse to flatten Gaza this whole time. By their standards, those targets in Tel Aviv are legitimate military targets. You can't have it both ways, right? And if you're watching all of this unfold and you're freaking out and you're going, oh, pray for Israel, but you haven't been praying for Gaza over the past 20 months, you need to ask yourself some serious fucking questions. Why is it that when you see white Israelis being subject to the same shit that Gazans have been subjected to for almost 2 years now is the time that you freak out. Now is the time that you start feeling bad. It's just straight up disgusting, and you should feel ashamed of yourselves, honestly.
Hamas left this letter for a resident in Gaza, and let me read it out to you. It says, and I quote, "To the generous owners of the house, forgive us. We used some of your belongings, including food and clothes, as an urgent solution. We ask Allah to keep everyone safe. Your brothers in murder, the Qassam Brigades." The Qassam Brigades is what they call the military wing of Hamas. And great works of art and movies have always been inspired by such resistance movements. Here is George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, talking about how the Mujahideen and the Viet Cong inspired him to write Star Wars.
They're using asymmetric warfare against a highly organized empire. I think we call those guys terrorists today. We call them Mujahideen, we call them Al-Qaeda. When I did it, they were Viet Cong. Exactly. So were you thinking of that at the time? Yes. So it was a very anti-authoritarian, very kind of 60s against the man kind of thing, nested deep inside of a fantasy.
Or a colonial, we're fighting the largest empire in the world.
Right.
And we're just a bunch of hayseeds in coonskin hats that don't know nothing.
That's right.
And it was the same thing with the Vietnamese.
Yep.
And millions of Americans watched Star Wars and sided with the resistance. But if you ask them if they support Hamas or the Houthis or Hezbollah, current resistance movements, they're gonna say no. Or at least a vast majority will say no, of course.
سال پدر ما رو در بردن. بعد ما این همه مدت منتظریم که حمله کنیم. 1 سال و نیمه بیشتر از 5 میلیون جمعیت رو کشتن. الان همه اتم بمب میخواین. چرا بمب اتم ندید؟ تنگه هرمز ما نمیگفتیم ببندید.
You should see how they treat their women in Iran. We pumped a dead woman full of drugs and then cut her fetus out because her body was decaying.
Donald Trump just ordered Tehran, a city of 10 million people, almost 10 million people, to evacuate. And regardless of what you think about this statement, can you imagine the fear and paranoia that must be going through that city when the sitting US president at 2 a.m. Tehran time says that the city needs to evacuate? Donald Trump has also cut his G7 trip short and is returning back to DC immediately. And he's asked his National Security Council to convene for an emergency meeting as well. He has also lashed out at Tucker Carlson because Tucker Carlson, who's been one of his biggest supporters in right-wing media, has been against US involvement in the war against Iran. To which Trump responds by calling Tucker Carlson kooky and says that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Which they don't, obviously, because if they actually did, then the United States would not be attacking them. All signs point to, of course, the United States getting involved in the war imminently. However, there is one line of thinking that says that United States intelligence detected that there was about to be a heavy Iranian attack on Israel, so Trump is using strategic ambiguity to make sure it doesn't happen.
It is heartbreaking to see the images coming out of Tel Aviv. People having to put down their daiquiris and pina coladas and run to underground bunkers all around the city. Some apartment complexes were hit. I don't know what you guys did to deserve it, but I feel really bad for you. And my heart goes out to the people in Israel.
Iran, please stop. We lose, you win. Please stop.
Please, please, Iran, forgive us. Please, stop the destruction. Please,
please leave me alone.
Israel is the only country for us.
Why did you provoke Iran? This bold question was raised by Israeli journalist Itamar during a live press talk. In response, senior Israeli politician Bar-Lev admitted, "We underestimated Iran's missile capabilities. This rare moment of shock and regret has stunned the global audience. The world watches, as even the aggressors begin to question their moves."
And so, let's get it. But if you're looking for me, I'll be on the block. I'm a thing cop, possibly sitting on a drop now. Because I'm a rider.
Yeah. Another night of death and destruction in Israel as relentless missile attacks continue from Iran for the third day in a row. And panic has gripped Israel hard as the Israeli government has ordered airlines not to take Israelis abroad even when rescue flights begin. According to the Israeli government, it is because they don't want crowds to gather at the Ben Gurion airport, but this move is being largely seen as Israel trying to force the Israelis to be inside of Israel and use them as human shields. Speaking of human shields, according to Israeli sources, the death toll is now at 25 in Israel, with hundreds of others injured. With the Iranians in their latest barrage of missiles targeting nuclear scientists in Israel as payback for Israel doing the same against Iran. Iran also got a major strategic victory when they destroyed the Weizmann Institute in Israel, which is a leading research center in Israel and has heavy ties to Israel's defense industry, specifically in the realm of AI and drones. Meanwhile, in Tehran, there was also panic because Israel did what they did best and multiple car bombs went off at the same time in Tehran. Which is an international act of terrorism, by the way. Because even in war, there are rules.
תעשי פה משהו מטורף. מה זה? כאילו שוגר איזה מין... Okay. Go! יא בני זונות. יו, אני בהלם. אני בהלם. יו. אני בשוק. אני פאקינג בשוק.
אימא'לה.
These are pictures that people in Tehran took of their home before evacuating and posted to social media. Something to remember what their home looked like in case it isn't there or that it's in some state of destruction when they come back. I really want to amplify this because while it pains me to say, I think there are many Americans who struggle to see people from other parts of the world as people who live and love and have beautiful homes, just like we might strive to. Can you imagine waking up to a message from the President of the United States, social media post saying that you need to evacuate from where you live, from the life that you know, that you need to run, that you need to leave all of your comforts behind.
ببین این اوپاله، این اوپاله داریم میبینیم اینجا رو زدم. اینم خونه من، این خونه منه. اوه یا ابوالفضل، یا ابوالفضل، نگاه کن اونجا رو زدم. پشت سر هم دارن میزنن همین اطراف. من برم پایین، اینجا خطرناکه، باید برم پایین.
من قرآنی چه کاره زدم. اونو دیگه میزنه، خونه خرابی میگه نمیزنه.
Israel has no way out of this. You bomb Iran, now what? Iran's ballistic missiles can hit you too, as you can see all over TikTok. The Israeli air defense has been exposed. Iron Dome, which is short range, is 50k per missile. It's good against Hezbollah and like H. And the Iranian Shahed drone that sounds like an old diesel generator. But against 100 or 200 Iranian ballistic missile hitting Earth in 4 kilometers a second, you need advanced arrow system for that. But that's 3 million per interceptor. It's very expensive. How are you gonna keep on producing arrow interceptors when Iran just keeps on sending ballistic missiles? And that boils down to the biggest strategic mistake Israel is doing. You're relying on America, but America is not like America was in the 90s. You have a president who holds military parades, mass protests all over the country. You have no end game, Israel.
ساعت الان 3:37 دقیقه. ورودی فرحزاده پایین یه ساختمون مسکونی زده شده.
A night filled with humiliation and destruction for Israel as Iran was able to absolutely slap Israel the F up. It all started when Israel made the grave mistake of bombarding the South Pars gas field in Iran, to which Iran responded by targeting the gas field and oil refineries as well as ammonia plants in Haifa. And while Iran was destroying the city of Haifa, it did one thing that sent shivers up the spine of the Israelis, which is, along with a flurry of ballistic missiles, the Iranians in their attack of Haifa snuck in one hypersonic missile, which travels 5 times faster than the speed of sound. There is no air defense system on Earth, let alone in Israel, that can stop that. And once the hypersonic missile made impact in Haifa, the entire electricity of the city of Haifa went dark. The Iranians were so confident that after bombarding Haifa, they targeted Tel Aviv once again and struck the Israeli Ministry of Defense, which is their Pentagon, one more time. So 2 days in a row, the Iranians struck the most secure location in Israel. And Israel is in a lose-lose situation because if they want to strike back against Iran, they have to travel by fighter jet almost 2,000 kilometers away, while Iran can be inside the comfort of their own countries and fire missiles at Israel.
I know things don't look good right now, but I have a solution. We need to escalate the war in Gaza even more.
That's literally impossible.
Huh?
So there is nothing left to destroy. We've shattered most buildings and most infrastructure within Gaza. At this point, most Israelis, 55% of them, believe you're just doing this to put off investigations into corruption allegations against you, and that you're only continuing the war and escalating like this because you're trying to save your political career.
Okay, I've got a solution. We need to blow up Iran.
Why is no one talking about the fact that Iran assassinated the chief of Mossad? This is a really big deal. In a stunning escalation, Iran has reportedly obliterated Israel's Mossad headquarters in Herzliya with a precision missile strike, but they killed the Mossad chief David Barnea. This was really hard to verify. It's not really in the news, which makes me think that Israel is scrubbing news like this out of the mainstream media. And I don't know if it's because they don't want to look weak to the rest of the world. You would think that that would be something that they would use to try to draw more people to their side. However, eyes on Mossad is a very bad thing, because Mossad is pretty involved in Epstein files and a lot of other shit that they don't want us talking about. Yo, this is getting, like, wild AF. And let me tell you, they're not gonna just, like, let that happen. This is already a balls-to-the-wall war between those two countries because they are killing each other's very important leaders. And I'm not trying to start conspiracy theories, but interestingly enough, wasn't it 2 days ago that Trump said, okay, I think it's important that we do blow them up? Them, I mean Iran. I'm just saying, this shit goes a lot deeper than we will ever know.
Breaking news, Netanyahu has returned to Israel and he is in Tel Aviv right now. After fleeing to Greece for the past 2 days, he is back in Tel Aviv looking at the damage that he caused. Because remember, he struck Iran first starting this war. So all of the damage, all of the casualties are on this man right here. And this is the face of a man who realizes that his plan to drag the US into this war failed. Because today, President Trump announced that we are not joining this war. The United States is not joining the war for Israel. Instead, we are going to stick and defend the Iraqi airspace, not the Israeli. To make things worse for old BB here, China, Russia, North Korea, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan announced aid to Iran, meaning Israel will be standing alone against pretty much the top 10 military forces in the world. And he's looking at all this damage, realizing that the Iron Dome defense system has failed him, and that Israel is not invincible, something he knew, which is why he fled and left his people behind.
Oh shit, it's sirens. By the way, this is for Iran versus the Israel. Yeah, and free Palestine. So yeah, this is the sirens from the war, bruh.
C'est bon. لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الله أكبر تلاش نظام‌نگاران تحقیقی تا حدی نتیجه داد و معلوم شد علاوه بر امور بیش از 90
حاليا حد الحرم ما بعرف وين بالضبط بس حد الحرم دغري
مرحبا دول.
Ini filot. Wow, בבתי זיקוק.
יואו, הלך הבניין. יואו, יואו.
Come on, Iran, get the job done. Keep at it and at it, you know. If you haven't got enough money for the missiles, I'm willing to chip in a bit. I've got a few quids going spare. I don't mind helping you. Come on, get the job done. Keep at it. Keep at it. Flatten it. You know what I'm talking about. Flatten it, like Gaza was flattened. You get that job done. You get it done, kidder. Sort the buggers out. Yeah, I'm with you, Iran. You sort them out.
You're not getting it. It's not clocking to you. It's not clocking to you that I'm standing on business, is it?
Don't matter who did what to who at this point. Fact is, we went to war, and now there ain't no going back. I mean, shit, it's what war is, you know? Once you in it, you in it. If it's a lie, then we fight on that lie. But we gotta fight.
Yeah, now there's at least 27 tankers going across the pond. If you notice, they make a hard right sharp turn up here when they reach the water, which indicates that they are going probably somewhere in the vicinity of Israel. This is not going to like Finland or any of our military bases that are, you know, up higher. Now, according to the Pentagon Pizza Tracker on Twitter, which tracks the Pentagon, the Domino's Pizza near the Pentagon, the Domino's near the Pentagon has almost more than double the traffic it normally has. There's not a similar increase in other Domino's nearby, so that indicates that there is a surge of activity going on at the Pentagon, likely people at the Pentagon ordering lots of pizzas. Now, the Freddy's Beach Bar, which is also in Arlington nearby, is also experiencing a surge.
Close the convoy from the back and in front. No civilian vehicles will go in. Then 411, and then we're going to the Schiller route. That's where the site
Sitting on my doorstep, have you heard the news? No, I mean, did you hear the news when it went up in flames? It's the small men with the big heads that choke the light from the best of them, but they had to burn the rules to win the game. When they drop the ball, I'm gonna love you all day, and they'll play along. The kids will find us in the ashes like Pompeii. It's such a shame the diggers and knowers will all say, you and I won't hear them crying. What a waste.
They're trying to get Iran to attack an American military base so that America can go, they attacked us unprovoked and now we have to go take care of them. It's all bullshit. Israel started this war with Iran. Israel can fight this fucking war with Iran on their own. I have nothing against the people of Iran. I'm pretty sure the people of Iran have nothing against me. I have no reason to send the American people to go die for Israel. That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. I don't want to send our money to Israel to go fucking pay for this war. And yet Netanyahu's out here trying to do everything he can to get Iran to retaliate against American military bases. Why? So that a couple of American soldiers will die. Because Netanyahu knows that if a few American soldiers die, then the American president can use that as an excuse to get all ramped up and go to fucking war again. I don't want to go to war. I don't know any Americans who want to go to war. Fuck Netanyahu and fuck Israel.
I don't speak the language, but I think they're saying this is my bunker. God promised it to me and only me.
They're scared to death. That's why they shut the borders. You know, right now Israel has closed its borders. Nobody's allowed to leave Israel. Why? Because if they open the borders, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Israelis would flee. Israel's becoming a place where you can't live. It's uninhabitable. The ability to sustain viable life is rapidly being squeezed out of Israel as the Iranians target power plants. If they hit the Ashdod power generation facility, Tel Aviv goes dark. They blew up refineries. There's going to be, a shortage of fuel. The economy's non-functioning. There's no front right now where Israel's looking good. Israel's getting beat, blown up. I mean, this is embarrassing for Israel, and it's only going to get worse. The Iranians have been planning this campaign for a long time. They didn't want this war. They weren't ready for this war in terms of the immediacy. It was a surprise attack that gave them a bloody nose and a black eye, and they're missing a tooth. I mean, the Israelis hit them hard. There's no doubt about that. But the Iranians have gotten up, dusted themselves off, and now they're implementing a campaign. And this is what should scare all the little pro-Israeli people out there. This is a campaign that seeks to strategically defeat Israel, and they're achieving their objectives. And this is why Trump is in absolute panic state. But the Iranians are engaged in a campaign that if it goes on for another 2 weeks, Sammy, we're only 1 week into this war, and Israel's already losing. 2 weeks from now, Israel will have lost.
Here's something the mainstream media won't tell you, which is that Netanyahu will sit there with Trump, smiling and saying, all we want is peace. But time and time again, Israel has assassinated every serious negotiator for peace in the Middle East, including top Iranian officials that the Trump administration was just talking to about a potential nuclear deal.
We are ready.
Shamkhani is one of the few people in Iran authorized to speak about the sensitive negotiations.
We can definitely have better relations with the U.S.
Shamkhani said that Iran is willing to commit to never having a nuclear weapon.
He is now dead because of Israel. Quote, this action ordered by Prime Minister Netanyahu appears to deliberately undermine ongoing American diplomatic negotiations about Iran's nuclear program. Hell, they even assassinated their own prime minister because he dared to pursue peace. Yitzhak Rabin, who's seen here shaking hands with Yasser Arafat during the Oslo Accords, murdered by an Israeli ultranationalist in 1995. But the important detail that many leave out is that he was cheered on by none other than Benjamin Netanyahu himself. Mark my words, there can be no peace with Israel.
Here's what's happening in Iran. Israel launched a preemptive attack.
Yeah, no they didn't, because that's not really a real thing, is it? If you launch an attack against somebody who hasn't actually done anything to you, that's called an unprovoked assault. So the Israeli government and Benjamin Netanyahu launched an unprovoked assault against Iran and justified it with an unsubstantiated claim that Iran were, one, on the verge of developing nuclear weapons, and two, intending to use those nuclear weapons against Israel. Now, the problem is, this is the exact same unsubstantiated claim that Benny Boy here has been using to justify all manner of violence and atrocities for the last several decades.
Are there any other nations that you would recommend that the United States launch preemptive attacks upon?
The answer is categorically yes. Iraq and Iran.
In 1992, he claimed Iran were merely 3 years away from developing nuclear weapons and were a threat that must be dealt with immediately. 3 years later, in 1995, he claimed Iran were 5 to 7 years away from developing nuclear weapons and were a threat that must be dealt with immediately. 7 years later, in 2002, he claimed Iran were only 1 or 2 years away from developing nuclear weapons and were a threat that must be dealt with immediately. Now, he made almost exactly the same claim about Saddam Hussein in Iraq. You remember that? You remember Iraq? You remember WMDs and they hate us for our freedom? You remember the obvious lies about non-existent weapons of mass destruction that it later turned out were clearly deliberately fabricated? The lie that they were on the verge of nuclear weapons, that they were an imminent threat that had to be dealt with immediately? A lie that cost the lives of thousands of American soldiers and hundreds of thousands of civilian Iraqis. It's time for us to stop indulging the lies of the obvious lying liars. And I'm not saying that you're supposed to be pro-Iran. There are plenty of valid criticisms to be launched at the Iranian government. You just need to be pro yourself, anti-funneling a bunch of taxpayer money into the military-industrial complex that increases the debt and does nothing to serve the people, anti-sending young boys and girls halfway across the world to die on foreign soil for a bunch of lies and empty rhetoric. This man wants your brothers and sisters, your children, your parents to go die and kill in Iran because it serves his interests. This man and the influences and interests that he represents want to provoke war. It is time for the people of the Western world to be very abundantly clear that this man and the influences and the interests that he represents, that he speaks for, that he acts on behalf of, are no longer welcome in our political conversation.
Well, I hope there's going to be a deal. I think it's time for a deal, and we'll see what happens. But sometimes they have to fight it out, but we're going to see what happens. I think there's a good chance there'll be a deal.
Have you asked Israel to pause their airstrikes into Iran?
Well, I don't want to say that.
Say it? When does your patience run out?
It's already run out. That's why we're doing what we're doing.
You think you could take
Iran, the second is called Pakistan. If these radical regimes have nuclear weapons, they will.
This guy is just a power broker for the war banks. He's just here to sell war to people. And he's done it time and time and time again. That's his job.
Not obey the rules that have been obeyed in the last almost 7 decades.
Listen to that. They will not obey the rules that have been obeyed pretty much in the last 7 decades. Where's Israel been? Israel hasn't obeyed a single solitary rule.
Yeah, and just to add to that, you know how we say every Zionist accusation is a confession, right? That's true no matter what. Well, it's true in the case of Iran, too, because everything they're claiming that Iran is guilty of in their enrichment program to go to acquire nuclear weapons is exactly what Israel is doing. Israel is in violation of the IAEA. They've even blocked being assessed, being scrutinized. They're not supposed to have nuclear weapons, but if you didn't know, I mean, it's an open secret that they obviously do. They have hundreds of them. And I'm just making the point that they accuse Iran of all the things that they're actually doing. And it's far worse because they actually have nuclear weapons.
Иран выполнял все взятые на себя обязательства по известному соглашению, о котором мы сейчас упомянули. Все. К Ирану невозможно предъявить никаких претензий. Затем Соединенные Штаты в одностороннем порядке решили выйти из этого соглашения, а европейцы продолжили требовать от Ирана, чтобы он выполнял взятые на себя обязательства. Ну это, вы уж меня простите, но это какой-то бред. Не Иран же вышел из этого соглашения. США вышли. Бывший президент Трамп взял и принял решение выйти из соглашения. А европейцы говорят, да, это не очень хорошо, что американцы вышли, но вы, иранцы, все соблюдаете. С какого хрена-то иранцы, извините, так по-русски звучит грубовато немножко.
It ain't gonna happen in 2 weeks. The president does not need 2 weeks. He knows exactly what the situation is. He knows who he's dealing with, the Ayatollah Khamenei. And I guarantee you, stay tuned, watch your phones, listen to your radios. I guarantee you, something is going to happen very, very soon. It could take a day, 2 days, 3 days. Let us remember, this is not just about Israel and the well-being of the state of Israel. Let us remember that hundreds of Americans, American Marines, American soldiers, civilians, were murdered by this regime over the last number of decades. Who would oppose that America take some kind of action to avenge the death of Americans who were murdered by these monsters, by these Nazis?
It looks like the United States is getting ready to hit Iran from Saudi Arabia because new satellite imagery show major US weapons buildup and military equipment at the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. It is also one of the single largest forward deployments of US strike and refueling capabilities in the region in years. Now, the military buildup could be to scare Iran into easing their strikes against Israel. But I think a secret deal between the United States and Iran has already been made, whereby Iran will allow the United States to come and strike the Fordo nuclear facilities, and Iran will move all of the sensitive stuff, the real important stuff, from the facility and only allow the United States to do some cosmetic damage. This will placate Israel. They get to have the say that the Americans did not abandon them. And in exchange, the United States can also let Iran hit a couple of US bases where the United States will evacuate in advance, of course, but may also keep a couple of soldiers for Iran to hit. I only say this because stuff like this happens all the time behind the scenes. As much as the United States wants to go to war against Iran, the United States are also cowards. So they will not go to all-out war against Iran when there's still the opportunity of heavy casualties of US military stationed in the Middle East. The US just bombed Iran. Donald Trump announced it on Truth Social, and he said, and I quote, "We have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. All US planes are now outside of Iranian airspace. A full payload of bombs were dropped on the primary site, Fordo. All planes are safely on their way home. Now is the time for peace. Thank you for your attention on the matter." Which is such an American thing to say, bombing a country, multiple nuclear sites at that, and then saying, now is the time for peace. However, it is a little bit of strange because we still do not have any visuals on the American bombing of these nuclear sites in Iraq. And while the Americans, according to Trump at least, have retreated from Iranian airspace, the Israelis are still bombing Iran. We will see how the Iranians respond. Of course, they did say that if the Americans get involved, they will respond by hitting American bases all over the Middle East. But as I predicted earlier this morning, it looks like this hit was coordinated with the Iranians by the Americans in advance. Developing story, of course, but it looks like we've avoided World War III for now.
Oh, that just gave me the chills. I'm scared.
All right, let me conclude.
Oh dear God. Oh dear God. Oh dear God. Oh dear God.
This is a statement from Donald Trump, quote,
Oh dear God.
"We have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, etc."
Congratulations, President Trump. Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of the United States will change history. In Operation Rising Lion, Israel has done truly amazing things. But in tonight's action against Iran's nuclear facilities, America has been truly unsurpassed. It has done what no other country on earth could do. History will record that President Trump acted to deny the world's most dangerous regime the world's most dangerous weapons. His leadership today has created a pivot of history that can help lead the Middle East and beyond to a future of prosperity and peace. President Trump and I often say, peace through strength. First comes strength, then comes peace. And tonight, President Trump and the United States acted with a lot of strength. President Trump, I thank you. The people of Israel thank you. The forces of civilization thank you. God bless America. God bless Israel. And may God bless our unshakable alliance, our unbreakable faith.
Bad news for Israel and the US, as Iran's nuclear facilities are completely fine, according to a government official from Iran's Qom province who said, and I quote, "The underground facilities of Fordo nuclear site has not been damaged. The damage is above ground," which shows that it's mostly superficial damage. And the Iranians also confirmed that not only has there been no radiation leak because of the US bombing, but they had also evacuated the nuclear site well in advance of the bombing, which shows that the Iranians had some sort of a heads up before this US bombing. And unfortunately for Bibi Netanyahu, Iran responded to the US bombing by not taking the bait and not attacking US bases in the region, but by once again launching yet another round of ballistic missiles towards Israel. And Iran also used for the first time in this round of bombing against Israel the third generation Khaybar-Shekhan multi-warhead ballistic missile, which did tremendous damage to all of the targets, which were the Ben Gurion airport and military hubs all over Israel. And this is terrible news for Netanyahu because he was really hoping that Iran would take the bait and immediately launch attack against the United States and get them more embroiled. And now the ball is once again on America's court. Do they keep bombing Iran in support of Israel even though Iran hasn't attacked US yet? Or do they just keep letting Israel get hit? High-ranking Iranian officials have confirmed that the Trump administration gave them advance notice before the US bombing of the nuclear sites in Iran, and the Americans also said that it was going to be a one and done if the Iranians don't respond against Americans. This is according to Amwaj Media, who spoke to Iranian officials, and here's what we know so far. Around June 19th or 20th, photos show large trucks gathering in front of the main entrance of the Fordo nuclear facility in Iran, who were probably there to evacuate all of the centrifuges and other really important stuff right before the US bombings on those areas. The US also made sure not to strike Iran from any of the US military bases in the Middle East, fearing including Iranian retaliation against those military bases as well as those countries, with reports showing that the United States conducted the strikes against Iran directly from the United States. They struck Iran and they went back to the United States. And make no mistake, this was a huge strategic failure for Benjamin Netanyahu, because the Americans get to tell Bibi, hey, we did what you wanted, we bombed and destroyed their nuclear facilities. And so Netanyahu will now have to think of a new scheme to drag the United States back into the war against Iran, which he will, of course, because Bibi will not rest until there are American boots on the ground in Iran. As expected, Donald Trump will not respond to the Iranian attacks against US bases in the Middle East, according to the New York Times, proving once again that the attacks were coordinated in advance with Iran. And so a lot of people have been asking me, why the need for this coordination? Why this song and dance? And here's the explanation. Israel basically wants the United States to do regime change in Iran by going to all-out war against Iran. However, Donald Trump and the US military know that the United States going to all-out war against Iran would be absolutely catastrophic for the United States. But at the same time, the United States cannot be seen as doing nothing as Israel is getting bombarded by Iran. Israel at the end of the day is still a US colony, and so the US neocons especially will demand some sort of a US retaliation against Iran. However, the United States really wanted to calibrate this attack on Iran to make sure that any attack on Iran is just enough to get Israel off of their backs, and they get to say, hey, the Americans did not abandon us, but the attack by America to Iran cannot be so strong to where it angers the Iranians and the Iranians retaliate with a heavy hand.
What you need to understand that a lot of people are still missing is why Iran is under attack from Western imperialist powers and their Middle Eastern arm called Israel. Look, in 1979, Iran had an Islamic revolution. And even though it wasn't a communist revolution like what I advocate for, I recognize that they did a lot of things which angered Western capitalist imperialist powers. The main thing being their full-scale nationalization of the banking system and the major industries. And this meant that corporations and banks in the US and UK could no longer pillage Iran's resources like they had done for decades. And Iran had already tried voting in this change, but their leader was ousted in a US and UK-backed coup that replaced him with a dictatorial monarch. So even if you don't support the more theocratic elements of Iran's government, like women being encouraged to wear the hijab, you have to understand that in a material, concrete sense, they are defying Western capitalist imperialism and Zionism. And you should also know that a lot of women who wear the hijab do so as an act of defiance against what they see as Western cultural degeneracy, including the over-sexualization and exploitation of women. So to those people who say, I don't support Israel, but I also don't support Iran, you should look a little deeper into why Israel wants to destroy Iran. They've been defying Western capitalist imperialist powers economically and politically for decades, since the revolution. And you don't have to support every aspect of their government or everything that they do in order to recognize that.
So, food for thought, Iran is one of the only two countries left in this world that is not tied into any central banks whatsoever. They run a shadow network of banks for their people pretty much to be able to move money around the world. Long story short, they don't have no loans, they don't know anything to any central banks, much less the Rothschilds banking system. So you figured that's one of the major reasons they want to break them completely. And you know who's the other country? North Korea. You do what you want with that information.
Tonight, the Middle East stands at a pivot point. The administration says Operation Midnight Hammer severely damaged or destroyed Iran's largest nuclear sites. In response, Iran says the time for diplomacy is over and hints at military retaliation against the United States, even as more missiles from Iran strike Tel Aviv. Our coverage tonight begins with Foreign Affairs and Defense correspondent Nick Schifrin.
The U.S.'s unprecedented direct attack on Iran began under the cover of darkness. A dozen B-2 bombers flew 30 hours with multiple mid-air refueling, all under strict operational security, including a decoy. The bombers launched from Whiteman Air Force Base Friday night at midnight, flying east. At the same time, B-2s also launched west, tracked on social media. But that was deliberate deception to allow the main bombers to fly to Iran undetected and, alongside dozens of fighter jets, target Iran's key nuclear enrichment sites at Natanz and Fordo, where thousands of advanced centrifuges spin hundreds of feet underground. For the first time in combat, the U.S. dropped 14 30,000-pound massive ordnance penetrators designed to dig deep before exploding. This satellite image shows at least half a dozen precise impact sites at Fordo, where bombs landed before exploding deep underground. A third target, Esfahan, believed to hold Iran's enriched uranium stockpile, targeted by submarine-launched Tomahawk missiles.
This operation was designed to severely degrade Iran's nuclear weapons infrastructure. Initial battle damage assessments indicate that all three sites sustained extremely severe damage and destruction.
At the Pentagon today, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dan Kane, and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth called the mission limited and designed to convince Iran to negotiate.
This mission was not and has not been about regime change. As the president has directed and made clear, this is most certainly not open-ended. There are both public and private messages being directly delivered to the Iranians in multiple channels, giving them every opportunity to come to the table.
But Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi today said Iran had no intention to sit down.
Of course, the door for diplomacy should be always keep open, but this is not the case right now. My country has been under attack, under aggression, and we have to respond.
This morning, Tel Aviv absorbed the brunt of Iran's response. Iranian ballistic missiles tore through these apartments. Nobody died, but dozens were wounded. Iran could escalate further against Israel or target U.S. bases across the region where some 40,000 troops are on high alert. In the past, Iran has tried to choke off global oil supplies, actions that would bring further U.S. military strikes. Secretary of State Marco Rubio warned today.
There are no planned military operations right now against Iran unless they mess around and they attack American or American interests. Then they're going to have a problem.
And Iran remains extremely vulnerable. If the U.S. were to decide to launch more attacks, the U.S. military today said that despite sending dozens of B-2 bombers and fighter jets into Iran, there was no evidence Iran fired a single shot at any of those planes, John.
Nick, is there any assessment yet about how far this has set the Iran nuclear program back?
Last night, we heard from President Trump that the sites were, quote, totally obliterated. You heard a more calibrated description today in our piece from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Dan Kane, saying that there was, quote, severe damage. Military officials tell me simply it's too early to have a proper battle damage assessment. But we do know one thing. Vice President Vance said today something interesting. He acknowledged the U.S. did not target Iran's highly enriched uranium stockpile. That is held, at least partially, in Isfahan. You see some file video from Isfahan right there. That's essentially the fuel that Iran could use to build a bomb if it decided to do so. Experts told me the Tomahawks that struck that facility were not capable of actually getting underground enough to destroy that stockpile underneath. So we know for sure at least part of the stockpile survives. Some experts believe, John, that this will convince Iran that once and for all, it does need to go after weaponization of a nuclear bomb. But today, Rubio said if Iran made that decision, regime change would be back on the table.
Nick Schifrin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So you guys just bombed Iran's nuclear sites last night? Technically, we liberated them from enriched uranium. With 30,000 pounds bombs, big problems require freedom-sized solutions, I guess. You dropped bunker busters on underground labs. What part of that says peace? Peace is like a drywall. Sometimes you gotta punch a few holes before it's fixed. So, are we at war now, or just casually starting World War III on a weeknight? Well, depends about how Iran feels about unscheduled fireworks. Did Congress approve that? Shh, it's an executive vibe check. You bombed 3 nuclear sites and called it strategic containment. What do you even call the next step? Operation Oops, they fought back. Let me guess, you'll call the retaliation unprovoked aggression, right? Now you're catching on. That's textbook democracy. Anyway, gotta press for the press briefing. Today's theme is freedom isn't free.
Iran has blacked out internet and media and has reduced it to, their state-run media, preventing the people of Iran from getting information about what's going on outside. This is nothing new for that regime, this has been done in the past. But what if that was to happen here in America, where they throttled our internet access and prevented us from downloading an app to gain access to news outside of the U.S.? What do you think would happen?
But do you think, just like the Israelis, that the Americans this time have miscalculated who they're up against?
Well, before I answer that question, I do want to take our viewers back to the fact that we're talking about the United States, the only country on planet Earth that has actually used nuclear weapon to kill hundreds of thousands of people directly, and not to talk of the hundreds of thousands of people who later died because of the result of the poisoning of the nuclear weapon that was used. So the United States used nuclear weapon on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945 and killed hundreds. This is the same country now that is trying to protect the entire world from a nuclear-armed Iran. This is the same country that went to Afghanistan and went to Iraq and used depleted uranium to kill people there in the course of how many years that they were occupying that country and killing innocent people. Let our viewers not forget, the only thing the United States knows how to do in all of its history is how to bomb and kill people. Yes, that is sure. The United States has the military capacity to destroy things. Have they won any of the wars that they've initiated? No. They didn't win in Vietnam. They didn't win in Iraq. They didn't win in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, it's such a catastrophic shame that it's not so far away that people might have forgotten. The United States and its entire military literally ran away overnight, evacuating their military bases. And after 20 years or more than 20 years of being in Iraq, of being in Afghanistan and killing people and telling the world that we went to Afghanistan to liberate the women, they literally gave the government back to the same people they claimed they were trying to remove. This is the United States. Yes, they destroyed Afghanistan. Did they win the war? No. The U.S. soldiers had to go back in coffin. They had to lie to the families of the average Americans to come and die for the rich people in the United States. And this is the extension of what we're seeing. So when we ask the question, the United States that is telling the world now that we're trying to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran, what is the history of that United States? Because that provides context. It provides clarity. It helps us navigate this up and down, this rapid fire of information that we are consuming. When we have clarity, when we are grounded in who and the what, like the journalists, when we're confronted with a story, we ask the who, we ask the what, we ask the why, and the timing of it.
آنچه که ملاحظه کردید، صدایی که شنیدید، فضای غبارآلوده استادیوم.
She says, listen, what you hear is the sound of the aggressor. And then she says, you hear the sound of the aggressor attacking the truth. And then you hear the Allahu Akbars that come from the other employees there, and she's walking off set. This woman is one of the most famous
صدا و سیمای جمهوری اسلامی ایران دیدیم نمونه بارز و آشکار مخالفت با آزادی بیان هستش. ساختمان خبر مورد هدف قرار نگرفت. آزادی بیان، صدای حقیقت، صدایی که صدای زنان، مردان و کودکانیه که در روزهای اخیر به شهادت رسیدند در واقع مورد هدف قرار گرفت. دشمن صهیونیستی باز هم دچار خطای محاسباتی شد در مورد نظام.
After bombing Iran tonight, bringing the U.S. directly into this war in flagrant violation of international and domestic law, Trump gave this deranged speech.
Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror.
Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons. Even Trump's own intelligence agencies said Iran wasn't building a bomb. You know who does have nuclear weapons? Israel and the U.S. And the U.S. has used them on civilians, incinerating hundreds of thousands in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And since World War II, the U.S. has directly murdered nearly 10 million people in its wars in Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and backed the murder of tens of millions more, supporting death squads, dictatorships, proxy wars throughout the world. Tell me again who's the world's #1 state sponsor of terror?
For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East.
Apparently this lying motherfucker is now trying to blame Iran for what happened in Iraq. Yes, after illegally invading and occupying Iraq, some American troops were killed by roadside bombs. Most of those bombs were planted by Sunni forces, not the Shiite militias backed by Iran. As for hundreds of thousands killed in the Middle East, it's the U.S., not Iran, the U.S. that murdered nearly 1 million people in Iraq.
This cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left.
And here we get to the heart of Trump's gangster fascist speech. Do what we say or else. Forget about Iran's sovereignty. Forget about the fact that you're supposed to get congressional approval to start a war. Forget about the danger of escalation, even world war this poses. It's just raw, destructive power. Again, tell me who's the world's #1 state sponsor of terror? As the revolutionary leader Bob Avakian said,
"We can no longer afford to allow these imperialists to dominate the world and to determine the destiny of humanity. They need to be overthrown as quickly as possible."
Everyone, everywhere, into the streets. Stop the U.S.-Israeli war of aggression against Iran. The Trump fascist regime must go now.
This is propaganda. The entire image, the way that Trump just addressed the nation is pure propaganda. This is a rebrand because they have already branded their entire administration. Notice how these three are all standing together. They look unified. They look in agreement, while J.D. Vance stands drastically to the left, even though he is the left-hand man, giving the illusion that he's not standing with them. He turns on the actor and he starts looking disgusted at what Trump is saying to give the illusion that he does not agree with them. And to push the public's subconscious perception even farther, they are all wearing red ties while he wears a blue. But when they stand in solidarity, they all match. That's not by accident or because J.D. Vance doesn't agree with what they're doing. That's propaganda.
Israel wants to end the war with Iran and is now begging for a ceasefire. The Wall Street Journal reports that the United States has asked Arab nations to convey a message on behalf of Israel to Iran that Israel is ready to end the war as soon as possible. The Iranians, however, will not be eager to end the war against Israel as they now have the upper hand in the war, as it is now turning into a war of attrition which plays into the strengths of Iran, and Netanyahu has said, and I quote, "We will not be dragged into a war of attrition with Iran." Additional reports of Iranian parliament threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz has also freaked out the United States and the West, with Donald Trump announcing today on Truth Social, "Everyone keep oil prices down. I'm watching, don't do it." And Iran doesn't even have to officially close off the Strait of Hormuz, they just have to posture that Western oil tankers passing through the strait are in danger. And the insurance company covering these ships will force them to avoid taking the strait, which will lead to them taking longer routes, so oil and energy costs will rise. Or the insurance companies will increase their coverage because of the new threat in the Hormuz, which will also increase oil and energy prices in the United States. However, China and Russia will of course be allowed to pass through the strait, so they will enjoy cheap energy and oil while the energy cost in the West skyrocket. From Iran's point of view, they do not want the United States involved in this war against Israel. If they have to, they will fight the United States, of course, but in this case, they would rather keep the US out of their house and keep beating up Israel. But the Iranians are realists, and so they know that they have to give the United States some sort of an off-ramp. So through back-channel talks between the United States and Iran, this whole ruse was concocted that the United States would hit empty mountains in Iran and Iran would retaliate by hitting empty US bases in the region. Iran has started their retaliation against the United States by launching a missile barrage all over US military bases in the Middle East, and here's what we know so far. Iran has launched 6 missiles at Qatar and 1 at Iraq, targeting US bases in those countries. We of course don't know the extent of the damage as of yet, but the United States had evacuated the Al Udeid air base that the United States has in Qatar days ago. And looks like it is very similar to in 2020 when Iran was also allowed to strike empty US military bases in Iraq for retaliation against the United States assassinating Soleimani. But this time, Iran changed the equation by targeting US bases in Qatar, which no doubt has angered the Qataris a lot. Because now these Gulf state countries, especially Qatar, will be extremely mad at Donald Trump for disregarding their security and interests. And remember that Donald Trump had promised that Iran will not retaliate against these Gulf state countries, so much so in order to not get them involved at all, the United States launched their attacks directly from the United States homeland and then did not even stop at any of these bases and immediately flew back to the United States. And although Iran coordinated this strike in advance with the United States, but it is still extremely dangerous, and make no mistake, Bibi will exploit this as much as he can.
لحظة دخول مقر الصفر ما خلوش فيهم يخشوا. لحظة دخول شباب منطقة بوسليم مقر الصفر جاري التحميل بعون الله. مقر الصفر بعون الله جاري التحميل من منطقة شباب بوسليم. الله يبارك بدون رماية. هابطوا في مناوشات. ضد مناوشات ربي ينصرنا ويسلم.
Breaking news, Qatar just closed its entire airspace. This isn't some routine maintenance closure. This is a country going into full defensive mode as the Middle East potentially spirals towards chaos. Qatar's foreign minister just announced less than 2 hours ago at the time of this recording that they're temporarily shutting down all air traffic to, quote, ensure the safety of citizens, residents and visitors. But here's what they're really saying. We're bracing for Iranian retaliation against the United States and we don't want to be caught in the crossfire, right? We're not involved. This is huge because Qatar hosts Al Udeid Air Base. Why are you hosting a US air base? One of America's most important military installations in the Middle East is in Qatar, right? We're talking about the nerve center, right? The coordination hub of US operations across the entire region. And look at a map. Hopefully I've got one here. And Qatar is just south of Iran. It's in Iran's backyard. If Qatar is closing its airspace, they clearly know something we don't know. Even I don't know what's coming next, right? I hate to write it. I hate to say it. But the timing is absolutely crucial. This comes just 48 hours after the United States bombed 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. You know the gist, and Iran has been making increasingly serious threats, promising more strikes, promising to strike back at American assets. Qatar isn't just protecting civilian flights with this sort of air traffic ban. They're protecting themselves from becoming collateral damage in what could be World War III. I hate to say it, right? I hate to say it. But here's the domino effect nobody's talking about. Qatar Airways is a major regional carrier, and this closure is going to create absolute chaos for international travel. I've been on their flights. Their halal chicken and beef options are second to none, right? They're not to be messed with. And their desserts, oof. Anyway, sorry. Thousands of flights are going to be cancelled or rerouted. Why do I mention it? I'm coming up, right? Oil tankers in the Persian Gulf, also belonging to particularly risk-averse companies, are being turned around because the Strait of Hormuz, yeah, no thanks, I'm going straight home. You see what I did there? Sorry. Laugh during calamity, sorry. When a country that sits right in the middle of the world's most important shipping lanes suddenly goes into airspace lockdown, that's when you know things are about to get really bad really fast. Very high probability. This isn't just Qatar being cautious. This is Qatar saying something big's about to happen and we want no part of it. You leave us straight out of it completely. We're not involved. The fact that they're willing to shut down their entire economy temporarily tells you just how serious Iranian retaliation threats have become. When a country voluntarily isolates itself from the world, that's not fear. That's intelligence they have gathered. They know what's coming next, and it might be very ugly. A final point, right? A redeeming factor. It might not get ugly. Picture this, an Iranian missile barrage, or just one missile, hits Al Udeid airbase. Iran talks about how strong it is, how resolutely and confidently it responded to US aggression. You know, justice, June 21st happened, we responded June 20, whatever the time date is now, 23rd. But Iran told us, but Iran told the US But Iran told the US in advance, told Qatar in advance, so there would be no loss of life and no loss of expensive equipment. It's possible, right? Hear me out. It would be a way for Iran to save face, but still proceed to de-escalation. They could strike, but it's an organized strike that they organized in advance with the ones they're striking, right? They're playing, 4D chess, not even 3D chess, guys, 4D chess. It's possible. And if that turns out to be the case, I called it first of all. And more importantly, sorry, I felt like Donald Trump there being a bit, me. More importantly, it could be the off-ramp that Iran needs, that America needs, the region needs as a whole. The off-ramp Israel would be furious to see being used, which is why even if that's the case, that Iran just attacks a US airbase as a symbolic gesture, right? Even if that's the case, Israel would still be looking for ways to escalate. My last video I posted before this one mentioned a horrendous potential false flag target, the USS Nimitz. Oof, if that got targeted in a false flag attack, oof, I would cringe so hard, I'm not even lying. Have a watch if you're interested. Otherwise, for the unbiased news and analysis without the Western spin, I'm Mahfouz, and you know where to find me. Sorry, I'm exhausted at this moment. Oh. Guys, do I even want to bother mentioning it today? Yes, I do. I value heavily the people who engage with my videos. This community has grown significantly. 2 weeks ago, I was at about 20% of the channel size that you're looking at now. Okay, I was small fry. I'm still small fry, but I'm a bigger small fry. Okay, anyway, what I'm trying to say is the community's grown. There's loads of comments coming through. If you have any questions that you think could warrant a fleshed out, analytical, research-based video by myself presented in the way I do. I was going to say nicely, but yeah, you could call this presented nicely, right? Sure. If you have no budget and you're sitting in a box bedroom as your home office. Anyway, if you have any questions, post them in the comments. If you like other questions posted by other commenters in the comment section like those, and what I'll try and do is I'll try and see which ones are the most popular. Hopefully they rise to the top, kind of like Reddit. I don't think that's how it works though. Damn. Anyway, I'll try and find the popular ones and I'll try and make some videos on them if I am equipped in terms of my knowledge, in terms of my ability, and in my research capacity. I won't just like blag it. I won't just like faff about. But if I do actually know what I'm talking about, I'll make a response video. So thank you for your continued support. Thank you for your engagement. Share this. However, get creative. Share my videos how you can, because it really helps promote it. And if I can make any sort of income from this, I can justify allocating more time in my day to it. I can justify an animation budget with which I might be able to make genuine, it's one of my dreams, to make genuine explanation geopolitical videos on YouTube. Caspian Report style, but without the Western spin that he's got, unfortunately. I'm not judging him, okay? His animations are great, his explanations are great, but there's a very noticeable Western tilt to it. So I would be like the Muslim, non-Western spin Caspian Report, okay? The Qassam Report. I'll see you on the next one. Sorry, that's too good.
Breaking news. Ceasefire announced by Donald Trump between Iran and Israel. Trump announces on Truth Social that 6 to 12 hours from now, when Iran and Israel has finalized their final campaigns, there will be a permanent ceasefire. We can sleep well tonight, alhamdulillah. There won't be a third world war in that region at this time point in history. I'll say a few words. This is the kind of attitude that Sufi alchemy want to see. That world leaders put aside their selfish egos on behalf of saving human life. The attack on US base from Iran was very limited and intentionally intercepted by Qatar, just like the US bombing raid on the Iranian nuclear sites was intentionally unsuccessful. Iran has shown restraint and patience, which is why Allah has awarded them with nuclear technology, in my opinion. Trump seems to keep his campaign promise to be a peace president after all.
Yeah,
I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too. Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I'd never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
The liar lied again. What do you expect? Trump lied. There is no brokered peace agreement with Iran and Israel. Iran has received nothing, officially or unofficially, according to them. So where Trump's saying he brokered a peace, every single peace agreement that Trump has brokered all seems to favor the authoritarian country. Why is that? Oh, because that's who he likes. That's who he favors. That's what side he's on. And if you're supporting him, that's what side you're on. See how that works? Follow me for more.
Say again?
They dropped. Hold on.
Death, taxes, and Israel not abiding by the terms of a ceasefire. Those are the only three guarantees in life. As even Donald Trump has come out and blamed Israel for violating the ceasefire, which is crazy to see a sitting US president actually blame Israel on camera. But the seeds of the next time Israel will attack Iran have already been planted. Did you notice? Because this guy, Rafael Grossi, who's the chief of the UN nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, is now saying that Iran must disclose where it transferred its enriched uranium so that Rafael Grossi can go back to Iran and do his inspections. And at this point, Rafael Grossi has no credibility left. He's basically a Mossad agent. Because if you recall, Grossi was proven to be working with Israel after Iran hacked Israeli government documents, which revealed high collusion between Grossi and Israel. And Grossi is also accused by Iran of giving away the identities of top Iranian nuclear scientists over to Israel, and that's how Mossad was able to assassinate so many Iranian scientists. And so after regrouping for a few more months, Israel will once again attack Iran, and they will say that Rafael Grossi, the IAEA chief, has confirmed that no enriched uranium was destroyed. Israelis are mad at the US, with some Israelis online calling for the United States to be attacked by Israel because they're mad at Trump for not going to war on their behalf against Iran, with this guy saying one symbolic bomb in Washington will remind Donald Trump that he is not omnipotent and will restore our national honor. Yeah, I don't know what a symbolic bomb is, but nothing on earth can ever restore your national honor. And the comments underneath from his fellow Israelis or Zios are just as deranged. This person, for example, replied and said, "We did it on some Tuesday in September. Didn't we?" That's what they say. This person says that there are Israeli sleeper cells in the United States that they can awaken anytime. Remember that Western media has been talking about Iranian sleeper cells in America, which is of course not only not true, but is also very similar to the propaganda they had during the Iraq war. And I'm only bringing this up because can you imagine what the reaction would be if all of these threats against Donald Trump and the US were coming from the other side, the Iranian side or the Muslim side? While these open threats from Zios and Israelis online are allowed to stay up indefinitely. Donald Trump just humiliated Israel by admitting that they got their ass kicked by Iran. Here's the clip.
Israel got hit very hard, especially the last couple of days. Israel was hit really hard.
Those ballistic missiles, boy, they took out a lot of buildings.
And remember that Israel really hates it when other people point out the damage that they suffered in the hands of the Iranians, so much so that there are actually laws in Israel that prohibit the photographs of downed building and damages done by the Iranian missiles. But now that their sugar daddy Donald Trump is saying that Israel got its ass kicked by Iran, that too on camera, Israel cannot push back against their own big daddy Trump, at least publicly. And we didn't need Donald Trump to tell us this, of course. We all saw the photographs of utter destruction all over Israel, and of course the Israelis would struggle to fight against Iran, who has a real army, because they're only used to fighting defenseless women and children in Gaza. But make no mistake, what the Iranians did was an incredible show of strength. They took on all of Israel with the full backing of the United States, all of Western Europe, as well as the treacherous Gulf leaders that were 100% conniving behind Iran's back. And Iran also enjoyed some backup, most notably from the Chinese as well as some from the Russians, but it was nowhere near the backup Israel enjoyed from the West. Your favorite war criminals, Netanyahu and Donald Trump, have come out with a new plan for the Gaza ceasefire, and yes, it's just as crackpot and ridiculous as you think it is. According to their plan, the Gaza hostilities will end within 2 weeks, and the ending conditions will have 4 Arab nations, which will include Egypt and the UAE, who will then run Gaza, replacing Hamas, with remaining Hamas leadership to be exiled to other countries. Under this plan, the Israeli hostages will be freed, but no word about the Palestinian hostages. And also, how will you just magically get rid of Hamas? Just 2 days ago, for example, Hamas unalived 7 Israeli soldiers in an ambush. So they're doing well in the war. Anyways, the plan goes on to say that multiple nations will accept numerous Gaza inhabitants, so more ethnic cleansing, and then under this plan, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and additional Arab and Muslim countries will then recognize Israel and normalize relationship with them. Oh yeah, and the plan also sets that the United States will acknowledge limited Israeli sovereignty in the West Bank. And in exchange, Israel may think about talking about a 2-state solution. So basically, Israel gets everything in exchange for a pinky promise for a Palestinian state. And how will that even be possible? Because you already, according to this plan, will have taken all of the land that would make a Palestinian state to begin with.
Bibi Netanyahu is in big trouble, and I mean big trouble. Now that this ceasefire is in place, there is opportunity for lots of his ghosts to catch up with him and take him down. So, firstly, there are his corruption cases for fraud, for bribery. They were put on pause because Israel was in a war. Now that there is a ceasefire in place, they can come back in again. Netanyahu was also under heavy criticism for weakening the judiciary and kicking out some key heads of agencies that were undermining a lot of his narratives, including about October 7th. So those court cases catching up with him. Also, international pressure now on Gaza. There's been a ceasefire there. The international community badly wants a ceasefire on Gaza. This is not what his hardline right-wing friends in his coalition want. And so we go back to that scenario where either Netanyahu agrees to peace and works towards a 2-state solution, then breaking his government, making it fall apart, or he sticks with his right-wing government but completely loses all of his allies who have started putting more and more sanctions and pressure on him. So he's in that bind as well. Then there is the issue of the strike on Iran itself. Even though that was really popular with Israelis, over 80% support, nevertheless, it doesn't look like Netanyahu's big victory is a big victory, because it doesn't look like, A, it has significantly degraded Iran's capacity, which is the big brag that he and Trump put out, but it also looks like there wasn't any evidence that Iran was imminently going to create a nuclear weapon. And the consequence of that is also that Donald Trump is now really pissed with Benjamin Netanyahu, because he denied his own country's intelligence to go with what Bibi told him about the urgency. And even Trump's close supporter, who was very pro-Israel, Steve Bannon, was saying he has never seen Trump so angry because Netanyahu told him a barefaced lie about why it was necessary to go in right then and there, and also then didn't respect the ceasefire that Donald Trump was trying to lay down, but carried on bombing and then made weak accusations against Iran in order to try and ramp it up then. So it is quite clear that Bibi Netanyahu completely disrespected Donald Trump. At the same time, we have just had this seismic Democratic primary election in New York where a Muslim socialist has won the Democratic primary on a very strong ticket of being anti-Israel, anti the Netanyahu government, calling what Bibi Netanyahu is doing as a genocide, supporting boycott, sanctions and divestment initiatives against Israel, and saying that should Netanyahu come to New York and if he were mayor, he would have him arrested. And so this in the Israeli media is making them realize that there is a massive schism between Israel and the states. And this is all because of Netanyahu now and what he's been doing to Gaza and what he's been doing in Iran. So this pariah state nationhood that Israel is picking it up, even in the eyes of America. And remember, New York City is the largest Jewish community in the world. I mean, you've got just under 1 million Jews in New York City proper versus Tel Aviv, the city proper, is 400,000 and Jerusalem is 500,000. So, you know, New York, right? And this is all looking really bad for Netanyahu. Furthermore, let's go back to October the 7th. Over 80% of Israelis hold him responsible for the security failures and the mishandling of October 7th. And investigations that the head of Shin Bet and others were trying to bring forward, it looks like Netanyahu's been trying to squash that out. So if that catches up with him as well, then this is serious problems, all coming in at him from all these different angles. He has hurt his country's economy. He has done nothing with regard to Iran other than get lots of people around the world supporting Iran, retaliating back at him, causing massive economic damage there. For all the damage that Israel received, they are seeing absolutely no sympathy for it anywhere in the world. That's a shock to them. And then you've got all of the issues around Gaza and the West Bank, which Israelis are exhausted about now, looking to be unresolved. 20 hostages that are still believed to be alive in Gaza. Netanyahu is not negotiating for their release, has never shown any interest in it. The families of these hostages are a major political force in Israeli politics at the moment. So from all of these different angles, it's all starting to come down on Netanyahu's head. And he is in a tight right-wing coalition that can only see total victory, grabbing of Gaza, grabbing of the West Bank, regime change in Iran as the only things that they are interested in, with brinkmanship to the max. So something is going to break now. And in this moment of ceasefire and with it calm and peace and reflection, this is exactly the place that Netanyahu doesn't want to be in. Watch for really random moves from him to try and kick off war or aggression again, because he needs to live in that froth to escape everything that's catching up with him. So if we can just hold everything still and move focus back to Gaza, his corruption cases, his history over October the 7th, the hostages, all of that kind of stuff, the man's in trouble, real trouble, and deservedly so.
One should believe for a second that this is a real, actual, potential out of control escalatory war. No one should believe that for a second. And if you're older than 40 years old, you will know that that's the case, because you have some kind of a memory of history, and you will know that the moment a missile strike hits Tel Aviv from Iran, America would be bombing Iran around the clock. That's what they did when Saddam Hussein launched Scud missiles at Tel Aviv, and that's what they would have done in April against Iran if they were not in the process of cutting Israel loose. So if you can't see that they're cutting Israel loose right now, then I don't know what to tell you. Geopolitics is not your game. When there was the first time that Iran actually launched missiles against and drones against, that Iran launched against Israel. In the past, Iran would have been decimated for having done that. Now, the scale is beyond what anyone could have ever seen happening 10 years ago, 20 years ago, forget 30 years ago, even 5 years ago. If you see, and you do see, Tel Aviv burning, it's only because the power structure is fine with Tel Aviv burning. And the Israelis should clock into that. They should understand that power dynamics have shifted. We're not getting the reaction from the West that we used to. We're not getting the immediate support and backup that we used to get. They should be registering that, but they're not. Anyway, Netanyahu's not. He still lives in the 1990s. I don't see anything that's going on now except what I've always talked about, which is the reorganization of the region into a integrated collective sovereignty group of states that are more or less cohesive, and that includes the integration and the absorption of Israel. But now you can't get Israel to do it until you have humiliated them, until you have degraded their capabilities, and you have made it very clear to them that everyone has cut them off, that you have no options left but to align with the region, but to correct yourself, rehabilitate yourself, and get all of your fanatic elements out. And they're fleeing now.
So y'all gonna tell me that this symbolism don't remind y'all of anything? Like anything at all? It don't give y'all any other type of vibes. It's the Abraham Alliance. It's time for a new Middle East. It's 11 kings. Very interesting. Trump would make number 12 in this graphic. And they're all looking at him or kind of marveling at him. Yes, the photo is AI generated, but still the symbolism is telling. Trump is in the middle of all of these kings because he is the main king. And he also believes that. They also believe that. But does that not give y'all some other vibe? I don't know, like y'all this not give you Last Supper vibes? I'm telling y'all right now that something is not right. There is something going on behind the scenes and we are going to be shocked.
Okay, so shall we talk about the theater that's going on in Iran? And
Okay. Yeah, in fact, that's a good way to start it because there's a misunderstanding. And Evan, for anyone who hasn't looked at his tweets, Evan writes on X. I've mentioned him a number of times and interacted with him. And I've said that his analysis is very, very, it mirrors my own about what's going on in the region. And I think everyone should look at his account on X and read his tweets because he also has the patience to explain things that I maybe regard as obvious and don't explain. Or if you read his tweets, you sort of see like a whole process of things that go on inside my head and then don't come out my mouth. And I just tell you sort of the end of that process. Whereas Evan tells you step by step and he explains to you in much greater detail. But he had a tweet where he was talking about the misunderstanding of what's meant when we say theater, that what's going on between Iran and Israel is theater. It doesn't mean that there's no conflict. That doesn't mean that there's no conflict. And when you say it's theater, people think, oh, so it's all for show, and they're actually friends with each other. What I've always said is that they have a symbiotic relationship. That doesn't mean that they're friends, but they have a function for each other, and together they have a function for the West in the region, and there is a function to the conflict.
Yeah.
And the function of the conflict is not what most people think it is. That's what makes it theater, because it appears to be an existential clash between the Zionist regime and the so-called Islamic Republic of Iran, that they're going to wipe each other out, or that Iran is going to destroy the Zionists once and for all, or that the Zionists are going to destroy Iran once and for all. These are things that both of them have talked about for decades. And so the theater aspect of it is that they want it to appear to you this way when that's not really what's happening. And it's also important to note, though, that not necessarily everyone who's involved in this on their side knows that this isn't what's happening. They have their own ideologues. I don't personally think, this is where I have maybe a difference of opinion with Evan, for example. He thinks that Netanyahu is in on it. I don't think he is. I think Netanyahu is just a straight up psycho ideologue with very few options left. And his predictable behavior is being manipulated. And I think to a certain extent, that's the same thing going on with Iran, except that Iran is much more aligned with the regional plan.
Yeah.
They became more aligned with the regional plan. They have an idea of what they need to do to change in order to be included in the regional plan and to actually save their regime.
To be in the friends, they want to be continually in the friends group. Like
Right.
you said, they've been included in October 2023.
Yeah.
You had mentioned how Iran has now been included into the friends group. So they want to be towing the line.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they've done everything that was required of them. They've cut loose their militias. They cut loose Hezbollah. They cut loose Bashar al-Assad. They let, in my opinion, you can think what you want to think, but in my opinion, they let Ismail Haniyeh be assassinated. Potentially, they even let their former president be assassinated. Potentially, Allahu Alam. And in my opinion, they needed to do a cleaning house in Iran to get rid of the most hardline, militant, ideologically strident elements. They need to show to BRICS, they need to show to the GCC, they need to show to the A National OCGFC that they can play ball in a region that is stable and peaceful. They can't, however, defang themselves without severe consequences within their country, domestically, from the domestic population and from the military. So, you have to, the only way that you can get rid of, for example, proxies is either to disown them, which has political, rhetorical, ideological, and popular consequences on you if you do it, after you've built them up as the great heroes, the resistance messiahs of the Middle East. You can't just disown them. So you have to have them eliminated through what they're there for, through combat. And that's what they did. That's what they have done. What's eventually going to happen with the Houthis remains to be seen, because now the Houthis are more beholden to two different masters. Their first master obviously was Iran. They've always had a degree of independence and autonomy, but they're also more closely aligned now with Saudi Arabia than they ever were before. Doesn't mean, again, that they're friends. It means that they have mutual interests. But so the proxies have been let go. The proxies have been decapitated, and now the military command in Iran is being decapitated. But what I think is happening is what I've said, and again, I won't talk about it in great detail, because for anyone who wants to know what I think about the current conflict between Iran and so-called Israel, I've been talking about it ever since it started on the Telegram channel. So you can join the Telegram discussion, and I have spent a great deal of time talking about it and explaining it, and the discussion there has been going on since the 12th or the 13th. And then my X account, and then also, again, I would recommend Evan Writes on X, his X account, for more detail. But what's happening is mutual degradation of Iran and Israel in terms of their capabilities.
Yeah, for Israel, it's just becoming blatantly clear that the U.S. doesn't want any involvement.
You shouldn't. Yeah, no one should believe for a second that this is a real, actual, potential out of control escalatory war. No one should believe that for a second. And if you're older than 40 years old, you will know that that's the case, because you have some kind of a memory of history, and you will know that the moment a missile strike hits Tel Aviv from Iran, America would be bombing Iran around the clock. That's what they did when Saddam Hussein launched Scud missiles at Tel Aviv, and that's what they would have done in April against Iran. if they were not in the process of cutting Israel loose. So if you can't see that they're cutting Israel loose right now, then I don't know what to tell you. Geopolitics is not your game.
Yeah, let's remind the listeners, April was after the assassination of Khamenei, right?
When the Syrian embassy, the Iranian embassy in Syria,
embassy, yes.
or consulate, when there was the first time that Iran actually launched missiles against and drones against, that Iran launched against Israel.
Yes.
In the past, Iran would have been decimated for having done that. Now, the scale is beyond what anyone could have ever seen happening 10 years ago, 20 years ago, forget 30 years ago, even 5 years ago. It's like I said in the chat, if you see, and you do see, Tel Aviv burning, it's only because the power structure is fine with Tel Aviv burning. And the Israelis should clock into that. They should understand that power dynamics have shifted. We're not getting the reaction from the West that we used to. We're not getting the immediate support and backup that we used to get. They should be registering that, but they're not. Anyway, Netanyahu's not. He still lives in the 1990s. He still thinks that it's the 1990s. So the end result of that is I don't see anything that's going on now except what I've always talked about, which is the reorganization of the region into a integrated collective sovereignty group of states that are more or less cohesive, and that includes the integration and the absorption of Israel. But now you can't get Israel to do it until you have humiliated them, until you have degraded their capabilities, and you have made it very clear to them that everyone has cut them off, that you have no options left but to align with the region, but to correct yourself, rehabilitate yourself, and get all of your fanatic elements out. And they're fleeing now.
Yeah.
I mean, allegedly, Netanyahu himself isn't even there right now. Allegedly, he's in Greece. So, I mean, people have always asked me, like, well, according to your plan, the integration and so forth, the radical Zionists, they're never going to go along with that. They'll never accept that. They'll never agree to that. They're not going to be there. They'll leave.
Yeah.
Because they're going to see that their project is not going the way they want it to go. They all have somewhere else to go because they have to go. They can easily go back to where they came from. So they all are going to leave. A lot of them are going to leave anyway. The ultra orthodox ones, because they don't want to serve in the army. The freeloaders among the Zionists, they'll leave anyway. But as soon as they see this is something you have to understand also. What the Jews have been very good at, whether you accept or don't accept that they are Jews, because technically speaking, barely any of them are actually Jews, ethnically or religiously. They're atheist, white Europeans. But they have the instinct for survival, which makes them adaptable, and they can see when the wind is going this way, they'll go that way. They're not going to go up against the wind. And if the wind is blowing in the direction of integration into the wider region, stability, and no longer basing the reason for your existence on your ability to destabilize, well,
basically
you'll know which way to go, and it's back home. You'll go back home because you know that you don't really belong there.
Yeah, because your master is changing spots now. I mean,
well, your master is changing. You're getting a new landlord, like I've said. You're getting a new boss. You're getting a new landlord. And again, as I say, in order for that to happen, there are certain things that have to happen, like the degradation of Israel and the degradation of Iran, mutual degradation in terms of their ability to act autonomously and in non-compliance with the regional vision. Both of them are being downgraded. And for Iran, they are cleansing themselves of the militant ideologues that would have been a barrier to this integration. That's why it's theater. It doesn't mean that the conflict itself isn't real. But it's not war. It's not an out-of-control escalatory war that's going to bring us to the brink of, or all the way into, across the threshold into World War III. That's not what's happening. And if you look at even the markets, they know that that's not what's happening. The oil price went up a little bit, but it went to what is the normal price where it should already be. It didn't spike out of the, it should, if this was a real war, oil would already be over $100 a barrel. Straits of Hormuz would have already been cut off. U.S. bases and U.S. military facilities in the region would have already been struck by Iran. Potentially, they would have already launched attacks even against the Gulf states. They've done it in the past during the war, the Iran-Iraq war. Markets would be in a free fall. None of these things are happening. Even commercial airspace isn't closed in the region. Some of it's being rerouted to go, to avoid the closed airspace, rerouted. But commercial airspace is still active over Saudi Arabia, over Jordan, over Lebanon, Syria, UAE, so on. So no one is really in panic mode over what's going on. Means this isn't what you think it is. Means it's theater. But that doesn't mean it's fake. It just means that it's not what you think it is. So again, I don't want to, I can't really, I feel like I've talked about it so much on Telegram and I've tweeted about it. And like I said, Evan on X has explained it in great detail for anyone who wants to know. And here I'll say also, if you are someone, there's an extent to which anyone should be willing to accommodate your inability to do research or your lack of time to do research. Maybe I'll be generous. Maybe you have a lack of time to do research. Maybe you don't know how to do research. There's an extent to which we can accommodate that. But when we're talking about, for example, me, and I have 1,000 videos, all you have to do is watch them. Passively, you can just watch them. Or Evan on X, all you literally have to do is scroll his feed, and you can get an education that explains everything for you in detail. So if you can't even do that much, which doesn't even amount to research, if you can't even do that much, then that means that you're someone who will only ever be spoon-fed information. And I'm sorry, but my spoon is never going to be as big as the spoon of mainstream media. So even if I go to the trouble to spoon-feed you factual analysis, factual information, and so on, you will immediately take another spoon much bigger than mine of mainstream coverage. So mine will just get washed down, with the rest of it. So there's not any point. But if you're someone who really is genuinely interested in understanding what's going on, you can just look at, you can do a search of my videos that I've done about Iran. You can come to the Telegram channel and participate in what we have as daily discussion with me present almost daily. Or you can look at X, and look at Evan on X. I think it's because we're dealing with humanity. We're dealing with the human condition. We're dealing with suffering. We're dealing with hardship and wrongs and injustices and whatnot. And everyone feels, and of course, as Muslims, we're one body. The Ummah is one body. So everybody wants to, okay. But that, if you are obligated, in terms of responsibility, if you have any actual responsibility, which is dubious, that's ambiguous. Whether you have any responsibility for something that's happening thousands and thousands of miles away, that's ambiguous and debatable. But if you have a responsibility, then your responsibility extends only to the skill set that you have, to employ the skill set that you have, the resources that you have, material resources, intellectual resources, talent resources, and so on. Use what you have. Don't get into areas that you don't have talent, you don't have skills, you don't have resources. And there's so many people that are getting into what they're calling geopolitical analysis, but that's like calling someone who skips rocks on a pond an oceanographer. You don't know what you're talking about. You're dealing with at an incredibly superficial level, and all of the information, so-called information that you're getting is misinformation. Especially if you're an English language speaker exclusively, then I don't know what information you have that's valid. And neither do you, but you don't even discern. Yeah. You just see anything. For example, people will actually go, Netanyahu said such and such. Netanyahu said this and that. Why on earth would you react to a habitual liar to a delusional, psychopathic, psychotic, habitual liar. Why would you react to anything that this person says? You know? But again, this is just like, I can't go through the steps of getting you up to speed with the basic level of discernment that you need to have to be able to even approach understanding geopolitical issues.
Yeah, which brings me back to now, earlier on what we were talking about, the march to Gaza.
Yeah.
In Egypt.
Yeah, the March on Egypt is what it was.
Okay. That's
They called it the Global March to Gaza, but it was the March on Egypt by Western colonial activists.
And how did that? Okay, so it's caused.
It went exactly the way I said it would go.
Yeah.
And anyone who got through the airport and got into Egypt, then you'll know now, if you have any sense, which hasn't been established so far, but if you do have any sense, maybe you got some now after your experience in Egypt, then you'll know that I was right in telling you that the best case scenario for you is that you don't get even admitted into the country. That's the best case scenario. And the problem is, I think that probably there was just too many of you, that they couldn't stop all of you at the airport. So some of you got through, but obviously they're going to get you at any number of checkpoints or at your hotel. I don't know what you thought. I think that you thought that passport control at Egypt was just going to be some fat guy smoking a cigarette writing in pencil. Because you have a very derogatory view of the Arab world. You have a very, very dismissive, superior-minded projection of inferiority on the whole Arab world. And you don't think that they have authorities. You don't think they have a security and intelligence apparatus that can rival yours. You probably don't even think they've got internet or computers.
On the flip side, you think very highly of the other side.
This is the thing. I actually talked to the organizer of that thing, or one of the organizers of that thing, and suggested you should actually be going to Israel to do this march in Israel, because they're the ones who are committing the crimes. They're the ones who are actually responsible for preventing aid from entering Gaza, not Egypt. Egypt is not the one who's preventing aid from entering Gaza. They don't have unilateral control over the Rafah checkpoint. Israel is the one that's preventing aid. Israel is the one who's causing the need for aid. Israel is the one who's imposing the siege. You should do your march in Israel.
Also, you all have the golden passports that allows you entry into.
I mean, this is a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
Because it's the fact that they have those passports that made them think that they could just waltz into Egypt and be treated with kid gloves. In fact, that everyone would be grateful for them coming and saying, we're coming there to break the law. We're coming here to illegally protest, because after all, your laws don't apply to us. We can do what we want, and you should just be thankful to us for the little dollars that we're bringing into your economy. This is what they thought. This is what they said. I'm not putting words in their mouth. I'm saying what they said. This is literally what they said. They don't think, this just shows the extent to which they really have a view of the Arab world and the Muslim world as being inferior and beneath them. They really don't think that they even have to try to understand us. They don't think there's anything that they have to learn, anything that they have to study, anything that they have to research, anything about the culture, the society, the laws, anything. They don't think they have to learn any of that, because none of it applies to them, because we're all less than, we're all lower than them, and they can just waltz in and dictate, and no one will dare touch them. And I'm happy what happened to them. Wallahi, I'm happy. I'm happy for more than one reason. The last reason is that I told you so. That always satisfies me, even when it's not something pleasant. But for these particular people, you got exactly what you should have gotten when you came to Egypt. And the beautiful thing about it to me is that your white Western privilege didn't save you. That in and of itself signals Egypt's sovereignty. That in and of itself signals a shift in the global power dynamics. That your white Western privilege, your Western passports, did not immunize you from the consequences of your really belligerent actions. You got treated just like anybody else who breaks the law in Egypt. And that's, to me, that's a beautiful thing. And that's a an assertion of sovereignty, of Egyptian sovereignty. It doesn't matter who you are, which country you come from, what passport you hold, what color your skin is. You're going to get treated just like everybody else if you break the law. Because you did. Don't kid yourself. You went there to break the law. And the organizers knew that they were breaking the law. They knew perfectly well that they're breaking the law, and they said, we're going to proceed anyway, thinking that that's in their hands to decide. Because again, you have a dismissive view. You don't think that the Arab world is organized. You don't think that they have security, intelligence, laws, authorities, and you don't respect any of that. But you respect it in Israel. Because Israelis are Westerners. They're white Westerners. The overwhelming majority of them are white, European, Western, atheists, and you respect them. So you wouldn't do it with them because you know that you won't get the privilege, or you think that you won't get the same awe that you expect you'll get from Egyptians. Because you have that racist mentality that you think that you're just going to be greeted with awe when you walk in, and no one would dare touch you. But you know that the same Israeli who's going to check your passport, you probably saw him at a mall in Florida. You're all on the same page. You're all from the same place. You're all from the same culture. You all have the same background. You all have the same white privilege. So it doesn't count there. You won't do it in Israel because you respect them, and you don't respect the Muslims, and you don't respect the Arabs. That's why you did it in Egypt. And as I said from the beginning, you're doing it because you're trying to draw attention away from Israel and put the attention on the Arab regimes. You put the attention on Egypt and try and make them responsible for what you and your countries are doing. That's the whole reason for this march, and that's what I said from the beginning. So I'm glad what happened to you. The fact that there are people who are saying, well, maybe Egypt should have been nicer to them for the public relations value, for the media value, because it makes them look bad in the media. Whose media? Yeah. It makes you look bad in the media that no one even cares about anymore. And that's the most beautiful aspect of it. That trying to placate and appease and pander to the white liberal Western media doesn't matter to anyone anymore. No one cares. And rather, we want to convey the message. This was a media opportunity for them. They understood that. We know perfectly well that you're going to send these videos out.
Yeah.
And the message that we're sending out is, we don't care about your white, Western, liberal savior complex coming to our part of the world, trying to tell us what to do and how to be and how to act, and trying to put blame on us for what your countries are doing. No, you're going to get whooped upside the head just like anybody else who does that mess.
Yeah.
So it was a very positive media opportunity for Egypt in terms of messaging to the rest of the global South, standing up against really Western colonizer activism. And don't tell me about all of the people who went who weren't Westerners. There wasn't anyone there who participated in that except that they were Westerners or they were Westernized. Even if they're not from the West is inside them. All of those people who came from North Africa, Tunisia, whatever, all of those people, or from Turkey or other parts of the world, we know why you went. We know what kind of a people you are. We know what class you're from because you've got the expendable income, the disposable income to even participate in this. You're not like the rank and file, normal, average people. You're from a certain class of privileged people. It means that you probably went to English language schools, international schools, or what have you. And you're Westernized, you're liberal. And I include in that, and this is going to throw people for a loop, I include in the Western liberal mentality the Muslim Brotherhood. Everybody thinks that they're these Islamists and so forth. No, this is a colonizer organization. It maybe wasn't from the beginning, but that's what it evolved into. That's what it morphed into. Now it is a colonizer institution, a colonizer organization. So I'm glad what happened. Don't do it again. If you want to do something, even though I can't personally stand that Greta Thunberg, if you want to do something, do a flotilla where you're putting all of the attention on Israel, put all of the attention on the one who's perpetuating the genocide and who is actually enforcing the siege of Gaza. Don't put it on our governments. Shame on you. That makes me so mad. I'm glad what happened. They treated them with kid gloves as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I've seen a video going around of a guy, pleading so-called with the Egyptian authorities. Yeah. All we want to do, they're starving. We just want to deliver, but they're not the ones who are preventing it. And that's not why they're arresting you. They're arresting you because you're breaking the law in Egypt, which is supposed to not matter, and because even what you're saying now, right now, is nefarious, what you're saying. You're trying to put responsibility on Egypt for what Egypt isn't responsible for, rather than putting it on Israel. Really, these are diabolical people.
It's been said.
I don't care about your, like I said this in the chat and I've said it many times. I don't recognize your so-called compassion, your so-called caring for the Palestinians, when if you actually cared, then you would have, you would do the basic thing of educating yourself about the region, educating yourself about the issue so you actually understand what's going on and why and who. But you don't even do that. That means you don't really care. That means there's some other reason behind your so-called activism, and it's either that you have a psychological problem, an emotional problem, or you're an agent.
Yeah, or you're just easily put to use.
Yeah, you're a useful idiot.
Yeah.
You're a useful idiot.
There's that, but there's also an element of.
But we're making your useful idiots useless now.
Yeah.
That's what Egypt showed.
Exactly.
Your useful idiots are no longer useful to you.
Yeah, but I have to point out that the kind of really, the complete how little you think of Muslims, that this guy who clearly does not identify or claim to be Muslim, but is invoking Islam and wants Iman into getting the guts to acquiesce. Like you think that if you just, it's the Islamic people, they care, I care about them, I have them in my heart, as if it just takes that much to move the Muslims. Because in your mind, you actually think that we are foolish, we are stupid, and we are so easily again, it's everything. That video
and you
is
used
so
to,
incriminating against you.
Absolutely. Your disdain for us used to go unchecked. And what Egypt showed is not going to go unchecked anymore. No one has to pander to you. The thing is, you can believe, now I'm going to go back to this topic. You can believe whatever you want to believe about why what's going on now is going on now between Iran and Israel. You can believe whatever you want. You can go ahead and believe that Iran is the great resistance messiah. It's a giant nation incarnation of the Mahdi. You can believe whatever you want. It doesn't matter to me. But the reality of the existence of a plan for the region is undeniable, is unarguable, that it includes the richest and most powerful and most influential players in the region, Saudi Arabia, the UAE. It has the support of BRICS. It has the support of BlackRock. It has the support of all of the major players among the national OCGFC. That's a thing that exists. So either you can, as I say, you can believe whatever you want. But at the end of the day, it all plays into the actualization and the realization and the achievement of that plan in the region. You can say that that's a coincidence if you want. That's fine. It doesn't matter. Because already, anyway, your geopolitical opinion is not something to be taken seriously. If you believe that Iran is a exclusively moral actor and is just virtuous and doing the right thing and blah, 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 already you're living in another world. It doesn't matter. But the way this plays out benefits that plan for the region. And it will help to bring about everything that I've been talking about, which is the subordination of Israel and its integration into the region under GCC management and financial economic control. Everyone is on board with it. Everyone in the region. This is the thing. Everyone is clearly on board with this plan, from Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan. The only outliers have been Israel and Iran, but even Iran is on board with the plan. And like I said, they've been doing the needful to show, because they're in a very deep hole of distrust regionally. People don't understand. Again, outsiders who don't understand and don't think they need to bother to understand before they opine about something. Outsiders don't understand that Iran is not viewed fundamentally differently by the region than how they view Israel. It is viewed as a bad actor. It is viewed as a destabilizing actor, and it has been for decades. And not without reason. You can, maybe you can argue they exaggerated or it's ideological but it's not just based on, it's not even just based on religion. It's based on actions. It's based on tangible actions that Iran has taken, that have made the region distrustful of them. But Iran is doing the needful, has been doing the needful to try to repair that trust and try to show that they can be a team player. And again, you can believe whatever you want to believe, but either way, the way this pans out, the way this plays out is, it all facilitates and expedites the accomplishment of that plan for the region. And like we were talking about the other day, the Levant, Greater Palestine, Bilad Hashem, is going to be the center of the world. It's going to be the center of the world politically, economically, in terms of trade, culturally, in every way that you can imagine. Bilad Hashem, Greater Palestine, is going to be the center of the world for the foreseeable future. I don't see anything that would cause that position to slip. Once it has been established, I don't see anything that would cause that position to slip. That's where to think about anything that would cause that position to slip is getting into territory where you are trying to predict literally hundreds of years in the future. Because it has everything, geographically, geopolitically, geostrategically, economically, resource-wise, everything to be the center of the world. That's what it has been historically, and that's what it will be. And obviously, also along with that, if we're looking at the future, there is no civilizational block of people that can hold a candle to the Muslims in terms of the inevitability of our preeminence as a global force, as a global influential force, that we will be, you can forget about countries, but as a civilizational block, there's nobody but us. And there's also nothing that you can foresee that would cause that to slip. So the future very clearly is a Muslim future. We're talking about, we have control of the most natural, the most important resources. I've said it a million times. The most important resources, the most strategic locations, the most geopolitically and geostrategically important locations. The choke points of the world are in our hands. And we're the only, again, civilizational block that has a bulge in youth rather than bulging youth, which is what you have in the West. Whatever youth you have, they're all overweight. Our demographics are good and very healthy and robust. And again, we are a cohesive demographic despite any ethnic, ethnic, linguistic, locational differences, geographic differences. All of these things are irrelevant in terms of our cohesion as a civilizational bloc. So the future is very clearly Muslim, and I can't see, again, anything, I can't foresee anything that would cause that to slip or that would prevent that from happening. It's an inevitability. Just factually speaking, if you take a religious narrative out of it, in terms of geopolitical basics, there's no other way that the world can go but Muslim preeminence. And this is a part of that. You can believe that, Iran is helping to achieve that by destroying Israel. You can believe whatever you want. And kudos to Iran for what they're doing. They're making everybody happy. Everybody is happy by seeing the videos. Everybody's happy about that. You're giving joy to millions of Muslims around the world for seeing what we're seeing. But they wouldn't be able to do that if this wasn't the plan that's in motion.